But anyway, Sammy, we've mentioned a couple of NFL names, some recent selections in the latest draft. Let's dive into grading these guys that have recently come out of the University of Utah.
Yeah, for sure. So, as we all know, we had a lot of draft picks this year, and we had a lot of success with those. So, Cole, we're gonna play a fun little game. We're gonna play steal, solid, or cut. So we're just gonna run down the list of these guys that Utah had drafted this year. So obviously, Jalen Johnson for the two of us, obviously hands down, that's a steal. He's projected to be a starter for the Chicago Bears this year. That's huge for him. That's huge for the Bears. That's huge for the program. Steal, hands down.
Oh, for sure. An absolute steal. He was the highest graded rookie corner by the Pro Football Focus. They're just a professional football analytic group with over 260,000 followers on their social media accounts. Jalen had a fantastic senior season, 36 tackles, 11 broken passes, 2 interceptions, and a pick 6, which earned him the second team All-American honors from the Walter Camp, the AP, Sports Illustrated. We could go on and on and on about how special this guy is. And I think at the 50th pick by the Chicago Bears, I think they've got themselves a steal.
Huge steal. Keeping on in that secondary, we're going to go back to Julian Blackmon. Again, a steal for the Colts. Even though he was just taken off of the injured reserve list, the non-football injury list, he is looking good. He's looking good for the Colts. His ACL tear is looking like he's getting back up to that where he was at prior to his injury. That's another steal. You're getting a guy in the safety position that's just killer. He's so good. I love him.
Oh, I love Julian. I think he is probably my favorite defensive player for the Utes for this last season. And the reason is he seems to always be in the right place. He had 2 forced fumbles, 4 broken passes, 4 interceptions last season, and a pick 6 against BYU. This guy is always where he needs to be. And even more impressive to me is he had 60 tackles, and I believe 40 of those were solo tackles. So he's taking these guys down by himself. When passes are being completed, he's making sure that they're not getting much more than after the reception.
One of the best moments of Julian Blackmon's career, in my opinion, happened last year versus Washington State, actually, when he made that open field tackle when Washington State was knocking on the door. Close game, and he made that open field tackle, and it was fantastic. Kept Washington State out of the end zone again. He can make tackles. He can make big plays. The Colts got a steal with him.
Absolutely.
Now, jumping over the offense, Zach Moss, steal, hands down. They're getting the all-time leading rusher in Utah football history. He is a battering ram. You cannot tackle that man. It takes 2 or 3 guys to bring him down. The Bills are gonna love that guy.
Absolutely, I love the comparison to Marshawn Lynch because time and again, Zach was put in situations where he's running it, right up the middle. It seems like the defense had shut him down. He spins, he keeps his legs moving, and we get 4 or 5 yards out of it when it should have been a loss. And I think the Bills are really going to appreciate having a guy like him. And like I mentioned earlier, there some NFL analysts have got them on their radar for somebody that's under the radar that could have potentially a really big season. And I hope the Bills give him that opportunity.
For sure. So first disagreement for the two of us, Terrell Burgess. I have him as a steal for the Los Angeles Rams. He played a fantastic season last year. He was on fire. Terrell Burgess was my defensive MVP last year. I loved him. He was fantastic. He really made a name for himself in his senior year, and it was so fun to watch him play. He balled out last year, and I think he's going to be very, very, very good for the Rams.
Yeah, and Sammy, this one was close for me. Super solid. I think just on the edge of being a steal. And some of that might have to do with my favoritism for Julian Blackmon. I just really liked how Julian, again, like I said earlier, he just always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. But so did Burgess. The guy had 81 tackles, 2 fumble recoveries, an interception, 5 broken passes. I think he's a borderline steal, but I'm just going to stick with solid on this one.
For sure. Keeping on the defense, Lecky Fotu, he got picked 114 by the Cardinals. I have him as a steal. Lecky Fotu is phenomenal. You walk up to him and you think you're like, this dude is huge. Like, he could really mess me up. He is a gentle giant, but when you get him on that football field, no hold, like he's going off. He will be able to. He blows through offensive lines. The Cardinals got a steal with him.
Yeah, and Sammy again, just a close one, but I went with a solid second team All American, first team All Pac-12 in the senior campaign. 9 tackles for loss, 29 total tackles, two pass breakups. I went with solid just because there's a couple other guys that I saw as more of a steal than him, and just for the sake of not having every Utah player as a steal, which you could honestly probably consider most of them to be, I'm just going to stick with solid with Lecky as well.
For sure. Bradley and I keeping in that defensive line that was so good for the Utes. The mayor of Sac Lake City right now, I have him as a steal. He's fantastic. He's gonna, if you get him on the edge, he's gonna make a quarterback's life a nightmare. And he's been making some quiet waves at Cowboys camp as well.
Yes, he has. According to Inside the Star, which is one of the Cowboys insider analysis media forums there, Anai has been drawing a lot of positive attention in training camp. And going back to his days at Utah, this guy broke 2 Utah school records with 30 career sacks and 210 negative yards on those sacks. And so this is the guy that I think was the absolute steal of the draft coming out of Utah. He's also the guy that, to me, makes up the other guys, like Lecky, just look solid. Bradley and I was surprised that he dropped as far as he did, because he's an absolute beast. He's a monster. He's always where he needs to be. He had 13 sacks in his senior season, 14 tackles for loss, and he did force just 1 fumble. But Bradley and I, you found a good place in Dallas.
For sure. Tyler Huntley, this is we have 2 vastly different opinions about him. I think he is a steal for the Ravens. He plays very similar to Lamar Jackson in the way that he can get out of that pocket and he can get the ball down the field. He is a steal for them. He's going to be, in my opinion, if he's not QB2, I think the Ravens have made a mistake.
So, Sammy, you got to forgive me for my analysis of him. I like Tyler. I think he was great for Utah. Pac-12 all-conference first team. He was a finalist for the Johnny Golden Arm Award, the Manning Award, and I think kind of had a little bit of he was pushing for the Heisman. But here's my issues with Tyler. I think to be a great quarterback in the NFL, to be a starter in the NFL, I think you have to be a better passer. Now, not to say he's a bad passer, but just to give you a little bit of comparison, looking at Joe Burrow. Now, this is the first pick, right? So it's a little bit. The numbers aren't going to be there for Tyler, but Joe Burrow's comparison, his senior year, 60 passing touchdowns, over 5,000 yards, 76.3 completion rate. On 402 of 527 attempts, and comparing that to Tyler, who only had 19 touchdowns, barely cracked 3,000 yards, and then a good completion rate, but only on 301 attempts, 73% on 301 attempts. And I think that's just because obviously you had Zach Moss in the backfield, but I don't think that Tyler is at that kind of a level that NFL quarterbacks need to be. Now, with that being said, I did have Tyler as a cut, but I think he's in the best possible place for him to be, learning behind Lamar Jackson, who was also very versatile and who wasn't the best passer in his college days. I think was much better than Tyler, but he can learn. Is on the edge of cut to solid. It just depends on his work ethic for me.
Tyler Huntley ended the season as the 2nd most accurate passer in the country. All right, so we're going to jump over to John Pennicini. Pennicini got picked up by the Lions. I have him as a solid pick. I don't think he's a starter at the Lions, but I think he would be a really good second string guy for that team. He had 2 forced fumbles last year. He knows how to get into that offensive line or even with the running back and just poke that ball out. He's a solid pick for the Lions on that one.
Yeah, I'm just not as convinced with John here. 38 tackles his senior year, 2 sacks. The 2 forced fumbles is definitely something to look at. But I don't see it with him. Like you said, maybe, a backup or a third string. I don't know. It's tough for me.
I think that he's good. He was surrounded by a lot of really talented guys on that defensive line with Bradley and Nye and Lecky Foe too. And he made the most of it last year with those 2 forced fumbles. And one of his forced fumbles was versus Washington in a very, very, very important moment that really turned the tides for Utah in that game. So I think he's a solid pick for the Lions. And then rounding things out with Francis Bernard, he was a free agent and he got picked up by the Cowboys. I think that's a steal. Reports are coming out of the Cowboys camp as well that he's killing it. He's had some interceptions during practices. He's making waves in Dallas, and I think that's a steal for the Cowboys, especially getting him as a free agent.
Yeah, so I originally put Saad, but Sammy, I'm going to agree with you and go with a steal here for a free. I was surprised that Francis actually didn't get drafted. For a free agent signing, Francis Bernard is an absolute monster, and pairing him on that Dallas Cowboys team, with Bradley and I, they've got a great defense to look forward to here in the future.